When Adironk Balagan finally signed the papers for her new home, her hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from pride. At 34, a self-made real estate investor from Lekki, Lagos, she had just bought a $17 million luxury mansion. For years, she had worked non-stop, flipping properties, sleeping late inside offices, and saying no to things her friends enjoyed. This house was not just concrete and glass. It was proof that her sacrifices mattered. The mansion stood tall and elegant, with wide balconies, shining floors, and a quiet confidence that turned heads. People slowed their cars just to stare. Neighbors whispered. Friends smiled with envy. To Adironk, it felt like freedom. A fresh start. A place where she could finally breathe and build a life with her husband, Kunal Balagan, without struggling or explaining herself. Mama Saad, Kunal's mother, was the loudest in celebration. She praised Adironk everywhere, at church, at family gatherings, even to strangers. She hugged her tightly, calling her my daughter and a good wife. But there was something else too. When Mama Saad walked through the house, her eyes moved slowly, carefully. She touched the walls, counted rooms, stood silently on the staircase longer than necessary. Adironk noticed it. The smiles that lasted a second too long. The questions that sounded innocent but felt heavy. This place is big O, Mama Saad laughed. God has really blessed our family. Our family. The word stayed with Adironk. She smiled back, but deep inside a quiet feeling stirred. Pride was there, yes, but also a small, uncomfortable warning she couldn't yet explain. After the excitement settled, Mama Saada's visits didn't slow down. They increased. Almost every day, she showed up at the mansion with a new face beside her. An aunt, a cousin, a distant relative Adironk had never met before. Each time, Mama Saad smiled and said the same thing. They just want to see the blessing God has done. At first, Adironk welcomed them. She served drinks, gave house tours, and laughed politely. But soon, the visits started to feel different. Mama Saad didn't just walk around anymore. She inspected. She counted bedrooms out loud. She asked why one room was larger than the others. She stood in the master bedroom, measuring the space with her eyes, even using her phone once to check the size. Then came the questions. So whose name is the house under? Mama Saad asked casually one afternoon, stirring her tea. Is it both of you or just Kunal? Another day she laughed and said, big houses like this should remain in the family. It's a legacy thing. Everyone laughed with her. Adironk forced a smile, but her chest felt tight. When she mentioned it to Kunal, he waved it off. You know my mother, he said. She talks too much. She's just excited. He told Adironk not to overthink it, not to look rude, not to create problems where there were none. So she stayed quiet. But she listened. She noticed how the cousins whispered when they thought she wasn't around. She heard one say, this floor is perfect for my kids. Another joked, if she travels, I'll stay here and manage the place. They laughed like it was nothing, like the house already belonged to them. Mama Saad started speaking in we instead of you. We will host Christmas here. We will expand the back later. Our house is big enough for everyone. Each sentence landed softly, but stayed heavy in Adironk's mind. She didn't confront anyone. She didn't argue. She smiled, nodded, and kept serving food. But inside, something had changed. Adironk began watching more than talking. She paid attention to words, to timing, to looks exchanged across the room. What others saw as harmless excitement, she slowly recognized as something else. And deep down, she understood one thing clearly. These were not jokes. These were plans. One evening, Adironk came home earlier than usual. A meeting had been canceled, and she decided to surprise Kunal with dinner. As she parked outside, she noticed extra cars in the driveway. That was strange. No one had told her about visitors. The moment she opened the door, she heard voices. Loud ones. Not the usual laughter or greetings, but serious, heated talk. She paused, her keys still in her hand. The voices were coming from the living room. Then she heard Mama Saada's voice clearly. This house is big enough for all of us, she said. It's our house now. Adironk's heart skipped. Our house? She slowly moved back and stood behind the hallway wall, out of sight. Her breathing became quiet as she listened. Around the table were Mama Saad, her brother, 2 sisters, and children from her previous marriage. A meeting was happening, a planned one, and Adironk was clearly not invited. Another voice spoke. When she travels for work, that's the best time. No noise. No questions. Someone laughed. Another added, I'll take the second floor. It's close to the balcony. I want the ground floor, a woman said quickly. Perfect for my business. A salon or mini supermarket. Mama Saad nodded like a leader approving decisions. We will do it step by step, she said. This house will settle many problems in the family. Weddings, businesses, visitors, everything. Adironk felt her legs weaken. They were planning weddings, businesses, futures. Inside her home, as if she didn't exist. Kunal's name came up once, but only as a bridge. Kunal will talk to her, Mama Saad said confidently. He's my son. He won't refuse. Adirondc pressed her hand against her mouth. Her ears rang. Every sentence felt like a slap. No one mentioned asking her. No one talked about permission. It was already decided. She stood there, hidden, listening to her life being rearranged without her voice. The woman who bought the house. The woman whose name was on the deal. Reduced to she. By the time the meeting ended and chairs scraped the floor, Adirondc quietly slipped out the back door. She sat in her car, staring at the steering wheel, shaking. In that moment, one truth became clear. This was never about family visits or excitement. It was a takeover. That night, Adirondc couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed every word she had overheard. Our house. When she travels. By morning, her chest felt heavy, but she needed answers. Not guesses. Not feelings. Proof. Later that day, Cunnel left his laptop open on the dining table before stepping into the shower. Adirondc didn't plan to snoop, but something pushed her forward. Her hands moved on their own. She sat down and tapped the trackpad. What she saw made her stomach drop. There was a folder on the desktop. Inside were scanned documents, draft agreements, written plans. One file mentioned temporary tenancy arrangement. Another listed room allocations with names beside them. Her name wasn't there. Not once. She scrolled further. There was an email conversation with a legal consultant. The subject line read, "Family Property Transfer Advice." Her heart started racing. The email talked about how a son could claim shared ownership of a matrimonial home and later open it to extended family use. It mentioned gentle pressure on the wife and cultural expectations as tools. Adironc's hands began to shake. This wasn't just Mama Saad talking too much. This wasn't relatives joking. This was planned, written, prepared. One document suggested that when Adirondc traveled for work, relatives could move in temporarily to establish presence. Another talked about turning part of the house into a family-run business to make it harder for her to object later. She closed her eyes, fighting tears. The betrayal cut deep, not only because of the house, but because Cunnel knew. He had allowed this. Maybe he hadn't started it, but he didn't stop it either. Mama Saad wasn't acting on impulse. She was guiding this slowly, carefully. Smiles in public, meetings in private, pressure behind closed doors. Adirondc finally understood something painful. This didn't begin after the house was bought. It began the moment they knew she could afford it. Maybe even before. She shut the laptop and sat there quietly. Her anger didn't explode. It settled, became cold, focused. At that moment, she made a decision. If they thought she was careless, emotional, or easy to control, they were wrong. They had a plan. Now, so did she. The next evening, Adirondc decided to test the truth she was afraid to face. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She cooked dinner like normal and waited until they were alone. Her voice was calm when she spoke, but her heart was beating fast. "Cunnel," she said gently, "if your family wanted to move into this house, what would you say?" He paused. Just for a second, but that second told her everything. He cleared his throat and avoided her eyes. "Why are you asking that?" he replied. She leaned closer. "I just want to know. Would you stop it?" Cunnel sighed and rubbed his face. "You know my mother," he said. "She means well. She's just thinking of the family." Adirondc nodded slowly. "And if I say no?" Another pause. This one was longer. "Well," he said carefully, "maybe we can compromise. You know, African culture doesn't really believe in one person owning everything. Family is family." The words hit her like cold water. "So the house I worked for," she asked quietly, "should belong to everyone?" Cunnel shrugged. "Not everyone. Just helping them. It won't hurt. Besides, what will people say if my mother complains?" That was the moment something inside Adirondc cracked. She realized he wasn't confused. He wasn't innocent. He was choosing comfort over truth. Tradition over boundaries. His mother's happiness over his wife's security. She asked one last question. "Did you know about the meetings?" Cunnel looked away again. "They were just talks," he said. "Nothing serious yet." Yet, Adirondc felt a deep, sharp disappointment settle in her chest. The house suddenly felt very quiet, very empty. She saw clearly now. This wasn't just about space or money. They wanted control. Control over her success. Control over her decisions. Control over her silence. Cunnel wasn't standing beside her. He was standing in the middle, hoping everyone would be pleased, even if she wasn't. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't cry. She simply nodded and stood up to clear the table. But inside, she knew something important had changed. She had tested loyalty, and it had failed. After that conversation, Adirondc didn't fight. She didn't argue. She didn't even change her tone. If anything, she became calmer, kinder, quieter, and that confused everyone. She smiled more around Mama Saad. She welcomed guests. She cooked big meals and hosted dinners like the perfect daughter-in-law. When Mama Saad bragged about the house, Adirondc nodded proudly. When she talked about family plans, Adirondc laughed softly and said nothing. They thought she had accepted it. Inside, she was planning. She stopped sharing her thoughts with Kunnel. She stopped explaining herself. Instead, she started listening and remembering. Dates, names, statements. Every careless word Mama Saad dropped was stored in her mind. One afternoon, she drove to Ikoyi and met her lawyer. Not in the big office. In a quiet room, away from noise. She laid everything on the table. The meetings, the documents, the pressure, the culture excuse. Her lawyer listened carefully and then nodded. "We'll protect you," he said. They restructured the ownership of the house into a private trust. A strong one. No spouse transfer. No family claims. No emotional pressure could touch it. Clauses were added that locked the house tighter than anyone expected. Even Kunnel wouldn't be able to move a chair legally without consent. Adirronk signed every paper with steady hand. Back at home, life went on as usual. Mama Saad increased her visits. She brought more relatives. She spoke louder about our house. She even hinted at who should move in first. Adirronk smiled and served drinks. Kunnel noticed something was different, but he couldn't name it. She wasn't arguing anymore. She wasn't complaining. And that made him relax. That was the mistake. Because Adirronk wasn't weak. She was quiet on purpose. At night, she walked through the house alone, touching the walls she paid for, the floors she earned. She reminded herself why she worked so hard, why she deserved peace. This wasn't revenge. It was protection. The storm was coming. And this time she was ready. The housewarming party was everything Mama Saad wanted it to be. The mansion was full of people, family members, church friends, business associates, and neighbors. Music played softly, glasses clinked, and everyone admired the beauty of the house. Mama Saad moved around like a proud owner, greeting guests and giving tours as if she had built the place herself. At some point, she tapped her glass and smiled widely. "This house," she said loudly, "is not just for today. It's for family expansion. Weddings, businesses, children, everyone. God has given us space, and we will use it." People nodded. Some clapped. A few cousins exchanged excited looks. Adirronk stood up calmly. Her voice was steady, not loud, not angry. "Please," she said with a small smile. "May I have everyone's attention for a moment?" The room slowly quieted. She walked toward the large screen that had been used earlier to display family photos. With one click, the image changed. Legal documents appeared. Clear. Official. Stamped. "This house," Adirronk said gently, "is held in a private trust." Murmurs started, then stopped. She continued, "There is no spouse transfer clause, no extended family claim, no tenancy rights, no future conversion into family property. Everything here is legally protected." The room fell completely silent. Kunnel's face drained of color. Mama Saad froze, her smile slowly disappearing. Adirronk didn't rush. She let the words sink in. "I worked many years for this home. I respect family. But respect also means boundaries." She scrolled through more pages. "These documents make the house untouchable. No pressure. No culture. No emotions can change that." Someone cleared their throat. Another guest looked away. The excitement in the room turned into tension. Mama Saad opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Adirronk finished softly. "Everyone is welcome as a guest. But ownership is not a discussion." She turned off the screen and smiled politely. The music didn't come back on. The house was still beautiful, still powerful. But now everyone understood one thing clearly. It was hers. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Mama Saada's face changed. The warm smile she always wore dropped completely. Her eyes hardened and her voice rose. "So this is how you repay me?" she shouted, pointing at Adirronk. "After all my prayers for you? After welcoming you as my daughter? You stand here and embarrass me in front of everyone." Gasps filled the room. She stepped forward, shaking with anger. "You are disrespectful. You are ungrateful. In our culture, a woman does not lock family out like that. You have betrayed this family." Kunnel stood beside them, frozen. He opened his mouth, closed it again, and said nothing. His silence was loud. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at the floor. Others stared, unable to look away. Phones were quietly lowered. Everyone knew they were watching something serious unfold. Adirronk took a slow breath. Her hands were steady when she spoke. "I didn't plan this to shame anyone," she said calmly. "But since we are speaking the truth, let's speak all of it." She looked directly at Mama Saad. "You held meetings in this house without my knowledge. You discussed moving people in when I travel. You assigned rooms. You planned businesses. You even talked about weddings here." The room went still. "You didn't ask me," Adirronk continued. "You didn't inform me. You called it our house and reduced me to she." Mama Saad tried to interrupt, but Adirronk raised her hand gently. "I found the documents," she said. "Draft agreements. Fake tenancy plans. Legal emails about pressuring me using culture." A sharp breath ran through the crowd. "This wasn't excitement," Adirronk said firmly. "It was a plan." Mama Saada's voice dropped. "You went through private things?" "I protected myself," Adirronk replied, "because no one else did." She turned briefly toward Kunnel. I asked for loyalty. I was told to compromise. That was the moment everything broke. The respected matriarch, the woman everyone feared and praised, stood exposed. Not as a loving mother, but as someone who tried to take what wasn't hers. No one clapped. No one defended her. The silence said enough. The mask had fallen, and the truth was loud. That night, after the last guest left and the doors were finally closed, the house felt different. Quiet. Heavy. The kind of silence that comes after truth has been spoken. Cunnel followed Adirondc into the bedroom. His eyes were red, his voice shaky. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't think it would go this far. I should have protected you." Adirondc didn't reply immediately. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the room. The beautiful space she once imagined sharing now felt like a lesson she had paid for in full. Cunnel moved closer. "Please," he begged. "It's my mother. I was confused. We can fix this." She finally looked at him. Calm. Tired. Clear. "You weren't confused," she said softly. "You were comfortable." She reached into her drawer and pulled out an envelope. She had prepared it earlier, quietly, without drama. She placed it in his hands. "What's this?" he asked. "Separation papers," she replied. Cunnel's hands shook. "You're ending the marriage over this?" Adirondc stood up. "I'm choosing myself," she explained slowly, not in anger but in truth. "You watched them plan my life without me. You knew. And when I asked for your loyalty, you offered me culture instead." Cunnel tried to speak, but no words came out. "The house didn't change anyone," Adirondc continued. "It revealed them." She walked out of the room and left him sitting there, surrounded by comfort he didn't protect. Later that night, Adirondc walked through the house alone. The lights were low. The walls felt steady, strong, hers. For the first time since buying the mansion, she felt peace. No noise. No pressure. No pretending. Just clarity. She didn't lose a marriage. She saved her future. Months passed, and the house felt lighter, quieter, peaceful in a way Adirondc had never known before. The mansion was no longer full of noise, demands, or hidden intentions. Only people who respected her boundaries were welcome now, and those people were few but genuine. Mama Sada's family stopped calling. The daily visits ended. The whispers disappeared. At first, the silence felt strange. Then it felt like freedom. Adirondc no longer had to explain herself or smile through discomfort. Her home finally felt like a home. She filled the space with things that made her happy. Morning coffee on the balcony, soft music in the evenings, friends who came without expectations and left with gratitude, work calls that excited her instead of exhausting her. The house didn't feel empty. It felt safe. Sometimes she thought about everything that happened. The plans, the lies, the pressure hidden behind culture and family words. And she realized something important. Success doesn't change people. It exposes them. It shows who respects you and who only respects what you have. Adirondc didn't regret her choices. Not the house. Not the trust. Not the separation. Every step protected her peace. Every boundary saved her future. One evening, as she stood by the window watching the city lights of Lagos glow in the distance, she smiled to herself and said quietly, "I didn't buy a house to inherit enemies." She didn't just protect a mansion. She protected her future.